Histogram. Histogram is a graphical representation of a frequency distributions of a series of the data. The data can be in the form of discrete or in the form of groups. This is a typical group data which are classified in accordance to their class, and these are typical histograms. There are y-axis and the x-axis. The y-axis represents the frequency of the data, while the x-axis represents the scale of the units for the set of the data. The frequency of the data is demonstrated by the rectangular blocks, where the higher the rectangular blocks indicates the higher the frequency. Based on the graphical representation here, we know that this group will have the highest degree of frequency and this group will have the lowest degree of frequency. From the histogram here, we are also able to observe the distributions of the data. For the histogram of the group data, there are two main modes of presentations, where the scale of the x-axis is determined by the midpoint of the class or the boundary of the class. The midpoint of the class is determined by the average value of the boundary of the class, while the boundary of the class is based on the direct boundary between different classes. As there are two ways to represent the classes, based on the classes here, we know that the boundary of the classes will be 10, 20, 30, 40, and 50. This happens when the 20 here appears in two different classes. Same goes to the 30 and 40. Therefore, the boundary of the classes is quite clear-cut. Sometimes you encounter the classes where the range within the classes are not overlapping. Taking this as an example, 7.5 at the end of the first class, while at the start of the second class it will be 7.6. With that, we need to determine the lower boundary and the upper boundary of each class. It is obtained by taking the average value of the upper boundary from the first class and the lower boundary of the second class. The average value of 7.5 and 7.6 will be equals to 7.55. With that, you can draw your histogram in the mode of the midpoint or in the mode of the class boundary. Both are applicable. Let us try an example to construct a histogram from a list of the data here. The data given refers to the gain of each batch of 40 transistors, which is expressed to the nearest whole number. The question asks us to form a frequency distribution of this data having 7 classes. To solve these questions, first you need to identify the range of the data. From the list of the data here, you need to find the highest value and the lowest value of the data. It is found that the highest value is 89, while the lowest value is 71. The differences between the highest and the lowest value is 18. There will be 7 classes as required by the questions. With that, we need to divide 18 with 7 classes in order to determine the size of each class. The size is about 3. Next, we need to outline the list of the classes with the size of 3. You will need to select the class with the lower value than the lowest value. In this case, the smallest value is 71. Once we have decided the lowest class, outline the list of the classes into 7 classes. The last value here needs to be greater than the highest value in the data. Now we have confirmed the list of the class here. Look into the data here. Group them into the respective class by using the tally diagram. Let's say now the first value is 81. You will draw a vertical line here. The second number is 83, which fall in this class. For every 5 units of the frequency, there will be a slash of the 4 vertical bars. Once you have done the tally diagram, convert this into the numbers. For the first class, the frequency is 1. For the second class, the frequency is 2. Let's say now you would like to draw your histogram by using the midpoint. You need to determine the class midpoint. Take the average value of the upper and lower boundary of the class. You will get the midpoints. There are a total of 40 data here. Make sure the summations of the frequency here will be equals to 40s. If the number is not exactly 40, that means there could be some mistakes while you are doing the tally diagram. You will have to look back on the data again and check if there are any errors. Once you have obtained the midpoint and the frequency, you may draw the histogram. The midpoints are indicated here. Make sure the X and Y axis is properly labeled. Indicates that there are units for the X axis. Please ensure that the units are properly indicated.